We're going to move into auditing now, 2 CFR 200 subpart F. Do I have anybody in here from your auditing department or with auditing responsibilities? I don't know, is there an auditing department? I have an auditor who works with me on my team in her previous life, but not anything on the department. Oh. Yep, I'll make sure you get there. All right, so we'll jump right in then. In this, we're going to talk about the non-federal entities requirement for a single audit and how often it's required. And we'll talk about the roles and responsibilities of the auditing process. So auditing requirements. Who's required to audit? Non-federal entities. So that would be ODOT or your MPOs, LPAs, anybody that is expending. I want to make sure I point out, it's not that you're receiving, you're expending $750,000 or more annually in federal funding in a single year. You're required to have a single audit annually. So the key word there is expenditures. The $750,000 threshold, who can tell me when? Here's a test from yesterday. It's not in the Kahoot, but when did 2 CFR 200 become, or when was 2 CFR 200 put in place? 2014. Good job, guys. They got it. December 26, 2014. That's when this threshold went into place as well, $750,000. Prior to that, it was $500,000. So December 26, 2014, this was increased from $500,000 to $750,000 expenditures. So the frequency of it, it's annually unless your state had in constitution or statute a biannual, so every 2-year provision. And that would have had to have been in effect by January 1st, 1987. Do you audit annually or do you have the biannual? I think there's only one state that I know of that has the biannual, but annually. Okay, I think North Dakota is the one state that has it. So you're required to do it annually. If you don't do it, what do you think happens? What's that? We stop giving money. What other? We can stop giving money across the board, or we can stop giving money on a specific project. The same responsibility falls to ODOT, though. If your LPAs or your MPOs are required to have annual audits and they don't do it, then that responsibility falls to you for the sanctions. Yes, not providing any funding. 2 CFR 200.338 provides all of the remedies there. We could also disallow certain costs, depending on what the audit is supposed to be on. We could also suspend just federal awards in general, as you said, until the audit is undertaken. All right. So the responsibilities for this really falls to you guys. So let's talk about your responsibilities. Your responsibilities, finance department, I'm assuming on an annual basis, you're providing financial statements and schedules of expenditures and providing all the information that the auditors need to have, correct? You're probably pulling your hair out, around August time frame? Is that, because you're June to July, or July to June? July to June, so about August, about the time you're pulling all the documentation for the previous year. Yep. You're arranging the audit using procurement standards. So what this means is you can't reduce competition when you're looking for an auditor. We'll talk about that in the next slide, but we're using open competition. Ensuring your audit is performed and submitted when due, so there are specific deadlines we're going to talk about in the next couple slides. Your audit has to be in place or those sanctions kick in and nobody wants to have their federal funding stopped. You have to ensure that the follow-up and corrective actions take place. So if your audit has any findings in it, you're responsible for determining how you're going to address those findings. And then provide the auditor with access to all of the data that they have to have. So in this case, we're talking for you guys reporting up to the federal level, but these same requirements fall to your LPAs and your MPOs if they're required to have the audit reporting up to you guys. All right, so auditor selection. 2 CFR 200.317 provides the procurement standards. As I was saying, really you want open competition here. You're not sole sourcing, it's not allowed, and you're not restricting your geographic location for the auditor. So you're not requiring that they be within like a 50-mile radius of Oklahoma City. You're looking and expanding. You want as much competition as you can, because really what you're wanting to get are high quality audits. If you get the Acme Audit Institute, who's done one, the chances are you're not going to get what you're paying for. You're not going to get the benefit of what you need it for. You really want to make sure you're getting a high quality, because you're going to have to just redo it again. Acme, okay. So to help you select an auditor, you should always request a peer review. Why do you think you want a peer review? When you're looking, think about it this way. When you're looking for a contractor to come to your house and make improvements, where do you generally look? Or how do you find them? Craigslist? Why? Angie has the homes. Okay, but Angie's List. Why would you go to Angie's List? What's in Angie's List? Recommendations, reviews. You're seeing what their performance is like, right? So this is the same idea. You're looking for a peer review. There's actually an association, and I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm going to read it to you. The AICPA, American Institute of CPAs, they conduct a peer review of each other, looking at their performance. How did they do with their auditing? Making sure you're getting the value for what you're paying, and that you're going to get a good audit out of it. So the peer review should be every 3 years or so they stay current. You want to make sure that they're responsive to the request for proposal. When you put a statement of work together, usually you have a selection criteria that you're following to make sure that they meet the requirements of what you need for your audit. You want to have the staff available, checking their qualifications, and then their price. Those are kind of the elements that we typically see when you're doing a contract action anyway. So even with your auditors, you're looking for that. All right. When you're selecting auditor, of course, as we talked about in the last couple of modules, we're talking about disadvantaged businesses or women-owned businesses. Of course, that competition is very strongly encouraged to look for those types of enterprises. Report submission. Here are the important deadlines. So the audit has to be submitted within 30 calendar days of receipt of the report from the auditor, or within 9 months after the audit period, whichever one comes first. So if it only takes your contractor 6 months to do the audit, then you have 30 days from the time you receive that audit. If the due date falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or federal holiday, it's due the next business day, of course. It should be available to the public. Everything we do is FOIA-able, Freedom of Information Act. So it should be available to your public unless there's something in statute that would require that it not be made available. It should not include PII. Bob talked about that a lot yesterday, talking about social security numbers or anything that would identify personnel specifically should not be included. And it should be electronically submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Did you want to show them the clearinghouse, or are we just going to move through? Okay. You can go out if you're curious, if you wonder how you compare to other states or within yourselves over years. You can go out to this Federal Audit Clearinghouse and you can search just for Oklahoma, and you can see what your audit findings may have been in the past, or if you're wanting to look at your border states, how they're faring. Maybe you want to partner together in certain things. You can look there.
The link to that is in your book, though, and it's harvester.census.gov FAC web, so that's why I can never remember that, but it's in here. So
Okay.
if you want to go out and find those, it's easily accessible.
Okay, right. So in your appendix, Bob was saying the link there, or the website is there. All right, cognizant agency, we talked about this a lot yesterday, trying to explain when we talked about the cognizant, who has the responsibility for your audits. The non-federal entity expending more than $50 million, so again, it's expending, not receiving, must have a cognizant agency. We talked about for ODOT, it's Health and Human Services. So it's the agency that's providing the predominant amount of funding. Again, Health and Human Services. It's decided, they look at it on every 5 years. So you can see here they looked at it, your expenditures in 2009, 14 and 19, and then every 5th year after that, what agency gave the most amount of funding, the predominant amount of funding to your agency. Responsibilities can be reassigned to another federal agency. I don't know that this happens very often, but it could, HHS could reassign the authority for the audit from HHS to Federal Highway. Possibly, I don't know why they would, but they could. If that is the case, then we have to make OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, aware within 30 days of the transfer.
What we see more often is
Microphone.
FTA and Federal Highway Administration. So really, US DOT is your cost for indirect costs. But I've seen many times where a local government might get more FTA funds than Federal Highway dollars. But we will still, Federal Highway will still be the cognizant agency because we have more experience in reviewing those in FTA. But then I've also seen many times where FTA will say, yeah, we'll go ahead and do it. It all depends on the region, the area.
Okay. And the management decision. Once the audit is done, a management decision has to be filed within 6 months. Whether the audit findings are sustained, outlining your expected action. What are you going to do if you have not already done it to take corrective action if it's necessary? Looking at how, if the audit identified disallowed costs or there's a repayment that needs to be made, how that's going to occur. That all has to be in this management decision. And then there has to be an explanation of why the management came to the decision that they came to. If the corrective action has not been already taken, you haven't already fixed whatever the audit finding was, you have to provide a timeline for when it's going to be done. Some findings could take a year or two, depending what the finding is, to correct. If there's a major finding with your financial system and you have to make improvements or you have to take care of bugs or whatever the situation might be with your system, that could take a period of time to correct, but you have to provide the timeline, the steps you're going to take to address the finding. Each finding, if we had gone out to the website, you'll see each finding has a finding number attached to it. So in the management decision, you would identify the finding with that reference number, and then it's due within 6 months after acceptance of the audit report. In a nutshell, that's auditing 101 in a very high level, but why it's so important. And if your auditing department were here, they would say, this is why we're asking you and we're asking you, planning department, for all of your documentation. This is why we're asking for time cards or asking for travel documents. It's all part of this auditing process. So now we'll do Kahoot. Get you started here. There's 3 questions this time. When is a non-federal entity required to have a single audit? Good job. When total federal expenditures are equal to or greater than $750,000 in the fiscal year. Good job. Almost beer 30, you're almost there. SDT, alrighty then. IT and ag right behind. All right, question 2. How often is a single audit required? Absolutely. Annually, if the expenditure threshold is met, the biannual came with, if it was in your state constitution prior to 1987. So, annually. All right, last question. Oh, well, let's see who's on top. Almost beer 30, you're right there. SDT, Thinking Face, and Liz. All right, let's see. Last question. When is a management decision required to be submitted? Very good. 6 months after the acceptance of the audit report. Good job, guys. Let's see who's on top. Number 3, Pinky Face. Liz. She is. Almost beer 30. Almost beer 30 is buying for everybody.